Good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome on Just Even Online TV. I'm Abdulkadir here once again on your program, Issues and Reality. Today, I have with me a communication, a prospective uh, leadership handler, and then a professor of political science with reputation in classes and in seminars and leadership training. I'm talking in person of Professor Abdulkadir Aremu. You're welcome on the show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
As you all know, that as just an online does bring you things that affect each and every one of us in the country. But today, we want to talk about the core ethos of governance and politics. I think these are two different concepts, but some people will say they are twins of different fathers. Everywhere you see governance, you see politics. And everywhere you see politics, you see governance. So I would like to start with governance in politics, and then what is the essence of governance? I mean, what is the essence of government in any society?
Thank you very much for having me. I will start by referring to a very popular quotation by Thomas Jefferson, one of America's former presidents, when he said that the primary purpose, and indeed the sole purpose of a good government, is to ensure the protection and happiness of the people. So that quotation is particularly striking to me because he emphasized it by saying a good government said protection of lives and the happiness of the people. What that means is that the purpose of government is to A, guarantee the security and safety of the people, and B, ensure that they are happy. And you can't be happy when you are not comfortable. You can't be happy when you don't have jobs. You can't be happy when you can't sustain a decent livelihood. You can't be happy when the kind of job that you have or the kind of work that you have is not dignifying nor fulfilling. So the good thing about it is that he didn't say the purpose of government. He said the purpose, the primary purpose, and the sole purpose of a good government is to ensure the protection of lives and the happiness of the people. So meaning that you can have government, but they may not necessarily qualify to be called good government if we use the two metrics that he gave us.
All right, so thank you very much. I think you've taken me to a pool I never expected, but many people would say that I think I've heard about the theory of town and gown. The people on the field and the people uh, in the realm of a certain profession. A lot of people will say that I can remember there was in 1970s uh, documentary that I watched, and I listened to one of the greatest Nigerian writers, Chino Achebe, where he said then that Nigeria was being led by its fourth 11. But today, some people will say that the bar has even been dropped even lower. What would you say that? I mean, the concept of good governance, I mean, a good government, and everything. How do we relate it to Nigeria? Do you think we have this good government, or where are we having the shortcomings?
So to be honest with you, there are global indices and ranking on good government. And I mean, while the methodology and the data that they are using for those methodologies may be questioned, may be challenged by some people, the fact remains that they are the globally accepted ranking organizations in terms of good government. You have a failed state index, You have Mo Ibrahim Index. We have so many of them that are out there. And many of those ranking bodies, Nigeria is not doing well on many of the indicators. So that's not a subjective conclusion to say that government is still something that is not attained in Nigeria yet. We are not even moving close to it. And a good example in recent time was the policy of the government to redesign the naira and to abruptly or suddenly migrate people to digital transactions without laying the appropriate foundations for it. And they rushed it within a very short time. You could see the number of people that died, the suffering that Nigerians passed through. A good government would not like to adopt policies that would deliberately inflict pain on its own citizens. So, irrespective of our ideological affiliation or political connection or affiliation to political parties, the bottom line will remain that that particular episode was a painful one in the history of Nigeria. And there are so many other policies that have been adopted like that will lead one to ask, okay, so what's the real motive behind this policy? Because if the policy is inflicting so much pain on the citizens, then one will have to ask the question, why? Why? What is the purpose of the government? And if we want to adopt a policy that is so painful, the public must know why they should endure. There was not even proper communication as to why the Naira redesign will take place and why it should be rushed within that very short period of time. And the government has a responsibility to explain to the citizens.
All right, thank you very much, sir. But I think that brings me to the beauty of democracy, concept of separation of power, check and balances. If I think we all know that, as everybody that I described what the government should look like, as well as say that there should be a arrowhead, somebody that will be at the top. But in the concept of democracy, you have people that can call him, that should be able to call him to order. If the president says this, I think there should be a house that can say, like the legislature, the parliament, to call it into a debate, and then we can have a recourse to the judiciary at hand. How do you think Nigeria is doing with democratic index? Do you think legislative arm are doing the job the way it should be done?
So, to be honest with you, our democracy is evolving, and we have to look at democracy uh, along two main planks or dimensions. One dimension is the procedural dimension. That is, do you have periodic elections? Whether they are free or fair, it's a different conversation. Do you have political parties? Are the political parties open to membership? Do you have a national parliament that is elected? And do they run the lawmaking process through the mill of legislative process? First reading, second reading, public hearing, third reading, and all that. Those are processes, and those are one component of democracy. So that's the procedural component of democracy. But there is another element which is the substantive component of democracy. That is, okay, even if you have all these procedures and all these processes, what do they translate to in terms of the livelihood of the people? What do they translate to in terms of the standard of living of the people? So if you have all these processes, okay, we have periodic elections every 4 years, we're doing it, blah, 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 and the quality of life of the people is declining, then there's a big question mark as to whether democracy, that democracy that we're talking about, is really translating to better livelihoods for the people. And this is a big problem all over the world. It's not only in Nigeria, in many countries. And that's why you had protests in Egypt and in other countries that led to the collapse of that democratic process. So what we should be talking about is, well, we have run this democratic process more than 2 decades now. We have done periodic elections, no military intervention, which is very good. But what has it translated to in terms of quality of lives of the people? Even in terms of the quality of the process, in terms of the quality, the independence of the legislature to serve as proper checks on the executive. Is the judiciary independent? Can a common man refer to the judiciary that we have as a last hope? Is there rule of law? Can we say human rights is being guaranteed? Um, so this substantive component of democracy is still a work in progress. Even the procedural element, there is still so much work to be done. But we can't see the glass as half empty. We have to see it as half full. We have to see it as work in progress. And we all hold a responsibility to contribute to the evolution of that process.
Okay, sir, but would you say that in Nigeria today we have, as blessed as Nigeria is in human resources and natural resources and every resources you can mention, do you think that we have our best at the end of the years? Some people will say that we have a aristocratic system of government in Nigeria. How would you react to that?
To be honest with you, there is a big question mark on that, and it could be debated. Some people will read out the CVs of some of the key personalities that are in government. Some will actually even refer to their pedigree and their past records. Um, we can't challenge that. Some of the people who have been in charge of government have been quite outstanding in terms of their experiences, in terms of their knowledge, in terms of their technical capacity. But what has it translated to in terms of tangible results, in terms of quality, access to quality care, in terms of quality of education, in terms of access to job opportunities, in terms of security of lives and property? So when we look at the composition of those who have been running the affairs of the country, some people will put a question mark on it and say, well, we may have some of them that are really outstanding, but maybe a good number of them are not. And you will not fault that as such, because when you look at the outcome of the human capital investment in governance, you wonder whether it is commensurate with what we can say a high level injection into the system. So which means we have to question the quality of those who are actually in charge. And sometimes when you actually see some of the policies that are rolled out and how those policies are implemented, you also want to question, come on, I think there could have been more thinking that will go into this before they actually come out. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the substantive component of the democratic process, it's not really coming up nicely. Why will I say that? Democracy is about popular participation. It's about citizens' engagement. It's about citizens' input into the governance process. Any government that is too detached from the public, that is not a bottom, there is no bottom up, effective bottom up approach to it, then it is not really democratic. And when you look at the various avenues that are supposed to be used to harvest citizens' input into the governance process, how citizens can hold the system accountable, they are very weak. In fact, some of them have actually become grossly ineffective. So rather than allowing the substantive component of democratic process to improve over time, they actually tend to weaken and decline over time. And that will speak to the quality of the manpower that have been injected into the system. So there is a big question mark to that.
Okay, sir, I like how you put it, but I want to ask two questions in one. On the part of our institutions. Some people have said that we should start building institutions and stop having strong men in position. Everybody believe that Nigerians of my age, who believe that Nigeria, I mean, the best election we've had was the one that was held in 2015. and then that kudos is given to Professor Wataru Jega. And Nigerians of my age too, we say that the best CFCC chairman Nigeria has seen is Nuhu Ribadu, and that kudos will be given to him. We said Nigerian will say that the best yeah, ICPC chairman we've seen is Justice our own Justice Mustafa Kabi.
Yeah.
That is people using institutions to effectively. How do we make the system work themselves even without strong men like the institution be institutionalized? I could remember in the year 2020, the former president, who is now the current president of of the United States, actually wanted himself to remain in power, and the system worked one way or the other, and he could not find his way through. Do you think how far do you think we are away from such a system?
So institutional building over time is a long-term investment and it costs a lot of resources. And before you can actually build effective institutions, you actually need effective leadership that will do that. So it's not possible for the institutions cannot just emerge from the skies. Some people must put their feet on the ground to say enough is enough. We have to allow the system to run as a system. But they also first and foremost must understand how systems actually work and how systems operate, how institutions work, and how they are built over time. What kind of investment are required to build those institutions? What kind of legal frameworks are needed to put in place to make sure that the institutions are bigger than the individuals, not the other way around? Now, a major problem right now in the country is that individuals are usually bigger than the institutions, and that's why the personalities actually loom larger than the institutions that they actually run. And once they're out of office, the institutions actually atrophy and they fizzle out into oblivion. That's a major challenge. What can we do? What we need to do first is a comprehensive review of some key institutions that need to be insulated. So I was the directing staff at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, and I led the study tour to South Africa in 2021. You see, South Africa is probably one of the few countries in Africa that sent a former president to jail. It's practically impossible to do in many other countries, including our own here, no matter the level of offense that the former president has committed. Why is it possible? The South African Constitution, there is what they call Article 9 institutions. Those Article 9 institutions cover the Office of Public Protector, Public Complaints Commission, INEC, Auditor General's Office, and so many things like that. Those institutions are beyond the control of the president. The president cannot make the appointment, cannot solely make the appointment to the Electoral Commission in South Africa. Unlike Nigeria, where
President recommend that the House of Assembly ratifies.
They just ratify whatever the president is putting before them, and some of them are actually known to be practically members of political parties to now run elections that are supposed to be non-partisan and politically neutral. The process in South Africa, I'm just giving the example of the Electoral Commission. Anybody can become an electoral commissioner in South Africa, including you or me. Once the advert is placed, everybody will apply.
Okay.
So it will now pass through public scrutiny and screening. They will start pulling down the number. First, the legislature has its own say. The judiciary has its own say. The public affairs commission have their own say. After all this, it now goes to the parliament. The parliament will now recommend maybe three or five, depending, to the president, where the president will now pick. If 5 people are recommended, the president will have to pick 3. Among those 3, they will decide among themselves who will be the chairman.
Okay, the 3 will call themselves together.
Not that the president will be the one to appoint it.
What a system.
And so because of that, the loyalty of the members of the commission as all other members of those Article 9 institutions, their loyalty is not to the president because the president cannot appoint them and cannot remove them. They are protected. So our own institutions in Nigeria, those who run those institutions, they owe their existence to the prerogative of the president or the executive. And that's a major problem. So when we talk about institutional strengthening and building institutions, we have to go back to the constitution. We have to go back to the legal framework that set up those institutions that can protect them in terms of appointment, in terms of disengagement from office, in terms of tenure of office, in terms of operations of the office, in terms of financing the office. They must be truly independent. Until we get to that point, we'll still be having institutions that are run from the office of the president, and because the president becomes too powerful, people who get the appointment through the president and they know they can be fired by the president would ultimately owe their allegiance to the president, and the political party that the president comes from can actually decide to do anything.
Okay, sir. But to cap this thing up, I think what do you think? What do you think public opinion holds in the Nigerian politics? When the people complain, what do you think our opinion holds? Do you think it holds water? Like when the government comes out with, with policy, do you think our opinion changes anything when we say we don't like this? Do you think there is a way to channel for the public to channel
Yeah,
our dissatisfaction with any policy?
so the grievance redress mechanisms for the public and citizens' engagement in policy making and implementation process in Nigeria is not as optimal as they should be. In fact, there are not really many. One of it is the public hearing that the National Assembly organizes from time to time. That is not really a very effective channel, as we all know. It has its own weaknesses, it has its own problems, and I can't really see many effective mechanisms for citizens to really vent except using the media, except going on the street to protest. There are not really effective mechanisms for the government to really harvest citizens' input or for citizens to make their input into the policy making process or hold the system accountable. I think there is still so much work to be done in that regard.
All right, sir. I think lastly, um, how do you think we're faring as a state? I think just when this more domicile um, inquirer, do you think that in terms of representation, do you think we are faring fine?
You mean Kwara State representation at the federal
Representation
level?
at the
Or
federal, at the state. Do you think we have control of, the balance, check and balance mechanisms? Do you think they're using them to?
well, Kwara State operates within the Nigerian system.
Okay.
And if the checks and balances in the Nigerian system are not really as effective as they should be, then Kwara State will not be an exception. Because, just like what I've mentioned to you earlier, the executive has a lot of leverage under the constitution vis-a-vis the legislature. Even if the legislature is very effective, the legislature is still part of the government. There ought to still be effective mechanisms for citizens to directly participate and make input into the system and hold the system accountable. And this is only possible if we have bodies that are truly independent, and the independence of those bodies are constitutionally guaranteed. And to guarantee the independence of those institutions, it must include the appointment and tenure of office of those who run those bodies. Until and unless we get to that point where members of the Electoral Commission do not hold their office on the prerogative of the executive or the president or the governor. Until we get to that point, it will still be difficult to regard that institution as truly independent. The same thing applies to all the other key accountability placeholders in the system. So it's not really a Kwara state issue per se. It's actually a more of a constitutional issue with respect to Nigeria. And since they are talking about another round of constitutional review, I think we all should be able to seize that opportunity to make sure that the institutions that are supposed to guarantee the mandate and the sanctity of citizenship are really strengthened and they are upheld under the new constitution.
But lastly, do you think Nigerians are educated enough to grasp the concept of institutional revolution and everything, so that we'll understand it when it's told to us? Do you think the vast majority of Nigerians have the needed education
No, I
to
doubt
grasp it?
it. No, I doubt it. To be honest, I doubt it. There is still a long way to go in terms of civic education, in terms of the ordinary citizens understanding how the system should be run and how the system to be and their own role in placing a very effective accountability ecosystem in Nigeria. So in terms of the level of education of the citizens, there is still so much work to do in that regard. We're still far away.
Where do you think we should start from?
Well, it's a long way because it has to start from the basics, the basic education level, the senior secondary education level, and the tertiary institutions. But we must also utilize those other systems, those other platforms that are outside of the formal education systems. Of course, media is also there. Community level is there. Particularly adult education platforms in the markets, in the rural areas, among the farmers. There has to be a comprehensive investment in civic education in this country for citizens to really understand who they are and what their roles are in holding the system accountable. No system, no leadership will provide accountability unless they are made to do that. And citizens must know that they also have a role to play in that
Thank
regard.
you very much, sir. I think that's a very, very good place to leave it. Thank you very much for
Thank you
your
very
time.
much. Thank you very
It
much.
has been a pleasure. I think for all those times I've been in a class, I think I've never had the opportunity to sit with a professor like this, and now this long conversation has been very educating and entertaining. Thank you very much for your time.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you very much, our viewers. That was Professor Abdulkadir Aremu, Professor of Political Science. He has been taking us through the nooks and cranny of the Nigerian politics and policies and things that should be done. It has been a very pleasure. I mean, very big pleasure for me and my team, the Just Event Online team. Thank you very much, everyone. Once again, I remember myself, Abdulkadir. See you once again. Thank you.